Okay. Calling to order. Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free School District, June 17 Board of Ed meeting. Final Board of Ed meeting for the 2018-2019 school year. Got a lot of paperwork up here. Okay. So I will kick it off by passing it over to Dr. Wilson for some announcements.
Yes, thank you. We have quite a busy time of year going on right now as we go down the final stretch next week and a half till the end of the school year. So for an example, just so you know, I believe it's as we speak, the senior high prom is going on. So right there, that's major, right? These seniors are going to be out, I think, just about every day or every night. They've got a barbecue sponsored for them on Wednesday. They have leading up the next night, they have an awards program, and then, of course, the actual graduation, which is on the Saturday, the 11th. Also, we have other graduation programs going over at our elementary schools. We have the moving up ceremony from the 4th to the 5th grade and beyond, and that's major. And they will also be we'll also be having at the middle school the 8th grade graduation will be on Friday at that would be at 7 p.m. So I may even be leaving out a few things here, but you can see that it's a very festive celebration time of year, and this is what it's all about: seeing kids who are the products of the educational program moving up the ladder, graduating, and actually the celebration for the kids, celebration for the program, and means a lot, of course, to the community and all our parents and so on. So we're very pleased to announce that. I don't think there are any other things that we need to be announcing. Oh, there is a SEPTA meeting this week, right? When is that? It's on Wednesday. Very good. So we wanted to give that a mention. I would like to say, and of course, this is also significant because it's the last meeting of the year, and at least one of our board members will be retiring and has had a distinguished career on the board, and we wish her well. And I would generally like to say this about the Board of Ed. I don't think that I can remember, and I've worked for different school districts over a long period of time. I don't ever remember the experience of working with a Board of Ed that has done so much in a single year. We had thought we might have it ready tonight, but it's not. But we're going to be sending out to the community a list of all the things that the board accomplished, and it's been really remarkable. And so they've worked very, very hard, and we I think deserve to. We really should appreciate all that they've done for the school and community, because it has been outstanding. And I think that's probably it for now. Thank you.
I just want to mention that the barbecue is on the wrong date here. It's the 19th. The barbecue on Thursday. I'm giving date correction a little bit later today.
Okay. So with that, recognition of new hires. Okay, we've got multiple different versions of the agenda here. Were you going to say something for the four new hires?
Yes, we have our principal and also our director of special ed will be introducing.
Perfect. Great. So why don't I pass the floor over to you guys to
Good evening. So first I'd like to start with Ms. Danielle Brennan, who's actually here with us this evening. It's with great pleasure that I would like to recommend Ms. Danielle Brennan to the probationary position of special education teacher at Hillside Elementary School for the 2019-2020 school year. Ms. Brennan completed her undergraduate degrees in elementary education, special education, and literacy at St. Thomas Aquinas College. In addition, she is currently enrolled in an instructional technology program through New York Institute of Technology. Ms. Brennan began her career at PS 70 Max Schoenfield School in 2010, where she taught first, second, and third grade integrated co-teaching classes. For the past 2 years, Ms. Brennan has taught fourth grade in an ICT integrated co-teaching setting at Washington Heights Academy. In checking references, Ms. Brennan was described as always in pursuit of professional development. She was identified as a model teacher and having a positive impact on student outcomes in both English language arts and mathematics consistently for several years. Throughout the screening and interview process, Ms. Brennan stood out as a strong candidate in both her pedagogy and interpersonal skills. All members of the interview committee were impressed with her demonstration lesson and unanimously voted to recommend her as a special education teacher at Hillside Elementary School. Based on her performance through this process and feedback from her references, it's my opinion that Ms. Brennan is the best candidate for this position.
Could you stand up, please?
I have one more who, she is not here this evening, but I'll introduce her as well. I'd like to recommend Ms. Gabriella Sokol to the leave replacement position of special education teacher at Hillside Elementary School for the 2019-2020 school year. Ms. Sokol completed her Bachelor's in Arts and Sciences in Elementary Education and Special Education with a minor in the Psychology of Children with Exceptionalities at SUNY Cortland. She is currently enrolled at Mercy College and is working towards her master's degree in teaching literacy, birth through 12th grade. Her anticipated date of completion is December 2019. Ms. Sokol began her teaching career at Hillside Elementary School as a building level substitute during her winter, spring, and summer breaks from college. Upon her graduation, she became Hillside's permanent building substitute. In the past few years, Ms. Sokol has been a leave replacement teacher at the Farragut Middle School, teaching 7th grade special education, and at Hillside Elementary School as a 4th grade general education teacher. Currently, Ms. Sokol is a 5th grade special education teacher in an integrated co-teacher classroom. Ms. Sokol has consistently demonstrated her ability to establish relationships with students, teachers, staff, and families. One family of a student she's currently working with described Ms. Sokol as truly knowing and understanding the individual needs of their child. Ms. Sokol has participated in professional development opportunities offered throughout this district and is always looking for ways to improve her practice. Based on her performance over the past years and feedback from district administration, it is my opinion that Ms. Sokol is the best candidate for this position.
Right.
She's
Please
not.
stand. Oh, nobody here.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I am very pleased to be here to speak on behalf of Ms. Jada Dickens, who we are hiring for the .8 Math RTI position, and we thank you, Board of Education, for approving that position. Everybody's very excited about it. It is pretty amazing. Ms. Dickens has been a resident intern and student teacher at Bronxville Elementary School for the past 2 years. Before that, Ms. Dickens served as an assistant teacher and intern at Virginia Marks Child Care Center. Ms. Dickens has also served as an assistant manager and team leader in the private sector. Ms. Dickens holds an Associate's of Applied Science from SUNY Westchester Community College and both a Bachelor of Arts in Sports Studies and Education and a Master of Childhood Education from Manhattanville College. She is certified in Childhood Education 1 through 6. She is described by her references as reliable, thoughtful, a teacher who always takes initiative, and just plain engaging to students. It is my pleasure to recommend Ms. Dickens for this position. I am confident that her diverse background and experience will make her an asset to our Hillside community. So, Ms. Dickens. I also would like to recommend Mr. Anthony Mancino for the leave replacement classroom teacher position at Hillside School. Mr. Mancino has been a substitute teacher at Hillside this year. He has also served as a substitute in many districts in Rockland County, including Nanuet, North Rockland, and Clarkstown. Mr. Mancino has also demonstrated leadership as a graduate assistant at St. Thomas Aquinas College and as a teaching assistant at a starting place. Mr. Mancino holds a Bachelor of Science in Childhood Education and a Master of Science in Childhood Special Education from St. Thomas Aquinas College. He is certified in Early Childhood Education and Childhood Education 1 through 6. Mr. Mancino is described by his references as mature, responsible, always going the extra mile, And finally, just can't say enough good things about him. It is my pleasure to recommend Mr. Mancino for this position. I am confident that his leadership skills and his demonstrated commitment to children will make him an asset to Hillside. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Welcome, everyone. So, student report, we don't have student possibly at the prom, right? And while we have a crowd here, I would like to acknowledge Lisa on behalf of the board, in recognition for her service. We've got some flowers for you as well. What I want to say about Lisa is Lisa and I ran together and have had something for you to frame, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Lisa and I ran together and have had a 3-year career on the board together. We've had a lot of strong agreements, some disagreements, different points of views and perspectives, which is, I believe, what a board is supposed to be. And the one thing I can say about Lisa is, as far as rigor and tracking down all of the data on any given topic, she is one of the best people that I've ever seen in that capacity, which, in working on a board, I think is something that is easy for an unpaid group of people to not really have the time, energy to do. Your ability to do that and to really see all angles and bring those angles forth for the board, for the community, I think is something that was really valuable here and in your role previously in the PTSA. So thank you for your service.
Thank you, guys. I just want to say it's been an honor and a privilege to serve this district and this community. I had relationships going in, and to be able to work with our entire staff, with our custodial staff, with our aides and assistants, our office workers, our clerical staff, our business office, our librarians, our amazing teachers, our fabulous administrators, has really, it's like I said, it's an honor. I can't really say more than that. And like Doug said, part of the reason we came in is to bring discussion back, and we did that. And I think we've had some really exciting, interesting discussions. And personally, I'm thrilled that some of the things that I care most about have finally become front and center, like our children's mental health and our diversity issues. So I'm really, really thrilled with that. And I'll also say, know that my education work isn't going to stop. I'm going to continue to be a member of the steering committee of New York State Allies for Publication and Public Education, and I've just been appointed to the New York State Bar Association Committee on Law, Youth, and Citizenship, which is really exciting. And know that I will continue to be an advocate on behalf of our district and our community, so you may see me over there from time to time. But thank you all.
Thank you. So now it's time to open up for public comment. Does anyone want to share any comments? We'll also have another second public comment at the end of the meeting. Okay. With that, we've got Laura Sullivan and Tessa Stewart here for a presentation. Do you have a slide deck? Is that? Okay, that's up. There we go. Yeah, that would be,
I'd just like to mention, as the two of them come up here, that the Special Education Department has been continuing. Some of you will remember we had Dr. Katzman was here with the presentation that was made back in February. But really, they've been working with Dr. Katzman throughout the winter period and up until now, and they've been working with a number of issues that go back to the original report that demonstrated that we needed to comply with a number of matters, and slowly but surely the areas where the district was not in complying, we have checked off, they have checked off, and really accomplished in a lot of areas. They'll mention that. And then beyond that, I think that they're in a position right now where they're taking some new initiatives, have taken some new initiatives lately, and actually are looking forward and moving on to the future. So they have a lot to tell you about. Just the one thing I would ask on their behalf is not to interrupt them while they're presenting, because it's important for them to present it in one package. But at the end of doing that, of course, there will be unlimited Q&A if anybody has questions, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Tesfa and I are here to present our special education end-of-year update. Thank you. So tonight's agenda includes 3 major topics. Updates. So this evening we'll discuss updates in the following areas: the continuum of services, evaluations and eligibility, professional development, and the hiring of the assistant superintendent and all the next steps that come along with Melissa. We're also going to talk about equity. We will share updated information in the following areas about equity of services and translation services. And then our final area is next steps. We're going to discuss our moving forward, which is going to include transitions, inclusion, assistive technology, communication, and professional development. So I'm going to start talking about continuum of services. So some of the things that we've done this past year is we've increased our communication class. Currently we have a 1-3. Next year, grades 1-3. Next year we'll have a K2 and a 3-5 class. And that's helping us to bring back 2 out-of-district students. We're also bringing back 2 parentally placed students for next year. 4 out-of-district students are returning, and we have 4 tuition students for next year, which is a big increase to our revenue. We were able, thank you to the board, to increase our ICTs in K-4. So now we have 2 integrated co-teaching classes on each grade level in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. And we have restructured and increased our reading instruction opportunities in Hillside, Farragut, and at the high school.
So one of the consistent themes we want to sort of emphasize throughout this presentation is sort of building capacity, building programs, and building what we have as a system. So the first thing, and one of the, I guess, the starting line of special education is the evaluations and eligibility. If you're not eligible for special education services. So what we did together, myself, Laura, Allison, and Nicole, who are 2 district psychologists, we made sure that we're all aligned as far as our evaluations and as far as our language. We communicate frequently, and we make sure that we run a consistent meeting and we have consistent expectation, beliefs, philosophies, and understand the data presented before us. Also, we worked with the Auburn, which is the Hudson Valley Regional Bilingual Education Resource Network, to make sure and see what we can do to support our ENL students, our second language students, to see how we can make sure those evaluations and those pieces of information are equitable and responsible for those students. That's me, sorry. So professional development. So in January, Laura and we went to Indianapolis. It was -2 degrees, and it was the CEC, which is the Conference for Exceptional Children. At that conference, we saw Dr. Katzman, the deity of special education, and she sends her love to everybody. She was very happy with the progress we're making, and she was very supportive. And we always want to reference the work she's done, but we still want to build, and we want to move past what she recommended to make this a long, sustainable system for Hastings. And these are just some of the areas of focus, but when we get further down to the presentation, you're going to see a large list of professional development. But at the CEC, we definitely had PD focusing on dyslexia, equity, and executive functioning skills of students. And we're hoping to turnkey that, or to continue to turnkey that, for everybody moving forward in 1920 and beyond. The next update is hiring of our assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction. This was a big part of the audit. Although this is probably not an update of what has been done, but now that we have one, we have Melissa with us, we can finalize the development of our shared vision, we can define clear roles and responsibilities, and we can really just work together with the general education, the special education, hand in hand with our curriculum and instruction. Finally, I need to give a big thank you to all the facilities, Joe, his staff, and as well as the building administrators for working together to provide space for all of our students so that we are now maintaining compliance.
In addition to the classroom space, the special education district office space will be changing. With a few tweaks and a bit of construction, we will now have a waiting area for parents and staff, and this will be an additional insurance in maintaining confidentiality for our students. So they're just going to restructure our space a little bit.
I'm moving.
And Tesfa's moving down the hallway. He won't be as close. We're a little disappointed, but
I'll be in the high school, in the heart of the high school.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so we're speaking a lot of, what we're doing this year. So one thing I do want to say, and it's not really related to this side, but, we're making tremendous progress, but I don't want to sit up here and have this conversation like, all right, we still have a lot of work to do. So I want to be transparent with that, with everybody here. We have a lot of work to do overall with our special education program, but we are making tremendous progress, but we're going to be transparent. We're still making strides. So one of the things we did also, we did an internal audit, internal study, just to make sure that there wasn't any implicit bias, and we want to ensure that there's equity in our special education department in Hastings. Look around, Hastings is a changing world. The world is a changing world, if that makes sense, but Hastings is changing, and we want to make sure that we had equity for all, regardless of what. In addition, like I spoke earlier, me personally, these are some of the areas of focus of professional development that I've taken and that I'm turnkeying, working with our E&L students with IEPs, and that's a population that really doesn't really have that much of a voice, and they're sort of double dipped in the sense that they're E&L students and they also have special needs. So we have to be very, very mindful for that population to be very supportive. Culturally responsive learning and exclusionary discipline. And we want to keep open minds and take into all factors before, and discipline is not really that big of an issue as I've seen here, but when and if it does occur, we want to take every single factor in place and make sure that we support the children as much as we can, including our children of special needs.
Translation services. So we did an internal study, and since I've been in this position from January of 2017, the 2016 school year, we have provided translators for every student that was mandated by law. In the past, we used a school employee that received a stipend for her translating services. This year, we've contracted with Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, who subcontracts with an outside agency in order to expand well beyond Spanish. The special education department has always provided the following materials for families in their native language. We've always provided the procedural safeguards, a parent's guide to special education in New York State for children's ages 3 to 21. We received both of these materials from New York State already translated. We provide meeting invitations and bilingual evaluations. We've always contracted these with outside agencies such as BOCES. As a result of an internal study, we found that we also needed to provide the following information to non-English speaking families in their native language, which we have already started the process of doing that back in February. This includes progress reports, prior written notices, and evaluation summaries. You won't see summaries up there because although we're only mandated to provide the summaries of the evaluations, we're actually translating the entire evaluation for families.
All right. So here's some next steps and things we want to do moving forward. So, transitions. Every year, New York State assigns districts different indicators, and this year, our indicator is number 13, which focuses primarily on secondary transitions, meaning what students plan for after high school. Right now, across districts, it's very, I wouldn't say simple, but it's not as data-driven as where it's going to be. It's generally, you ask a student, what do they want to do, and they tell you, and then there's usually a goal associated with it. Moving forward, we want to use different inventories, different forms of assessments to find out what a student wants to do after high school. And is it appropriate, is it applicable, is it measurable, and then we want to work and design programs and classes and instruction to help support those transitions into post-secondary education.
Our next thing that we are always looking at and will continue to probably always look at is inclusion. We're trying to look at it in two different ways, two different parts. The first part in terms of philosophy. Inclusion is you have to have a philosophy of inclusion and there's an act of inclusion. So the philosophy is the internal belief that students can be educated in their least restrictive environment. That's difficult. That's an ongoing process, but we're going to continue to plug away at that. The other part of inclusion, which I think is really important to talk about, is the actual implementation of it. So once you have the philosophy and the internal belief that this is what is children can be successful in the least restrictive environment, it's how do we put that into place and what do we need to make it successful for all of our students to be successful in the least restrictive environment.
And we also want to work on assistive technology. And, just to put it front, I might ask you guys for some money a little bit later down, but the world's changing. And, these tools, I don't know if you guys remember the last time or we were at a board meeting, or maybe I spoke about it so much, but we were discussing, myself and 5 other staff members, we got trained to run assistive technology evaluations. So prior in the past, we would outsource these evaluations and the board would have to pay X amount of dollars, but now it's built in internally. And I would say as of today, me personally, I've performed about 4 evaluations and they're very interesting and they're so useful to helping children. It's really life-changing or educationally life-changing for these children, the tools that are available and how we could build the capacity. So our goals are to establish a district-wide AT team, which we sort of have now, but we still have to refine it a little bit. We also want to refine the criteria of how we can, or what students are not so much eligible, what students need a more intensive assistive technology evaluation. To circumvent that in a way, what we want to do is build district-wide capacity. So if we have these universal designs of assistive technology that could support all kids, then when we go further in for the deeper dive, then we could really focus on the kids that really need them more intensive. But if we have the general universal designs, it could be helpful for every single child in the district. And we just want to overall improve and build our capacity of assistive technology within this district. And I think it could be a real game changer to help support kids.
The next thing we want to talk about is communication. There's a lot of components to the communication. These are just a few of the things that we want to highlight, but I know communication is just a huge topic. So we've working with SEPTA, they've been great help with us this year in terms of kind of thinking about how we can improve our communication. First thing that we developed is we're increasing our progress reports. Currently, the grades 5 through 12 get 4 progress reports a year, and K to 4 get 3. Next year, everyone will be getting 4 progress reports. And in these progress reports, basically what they are, they're just the goals that the children are working on for the year. And you can either be achieved, progressing satisfactorily, progressing consistently, progressing inconsistently, gradually, or not achieved. And there is just that you would either just get a PS, a PG, a PI, there's just the initials in it. And we found from hearing from the parents that it really wasn't giving them enough information. What does progressing inconsistently mean? And if my child is progressing inconsistently for 2 to 3 marking periods, what does that actually mean? So we're going to be providing anecdotal notes to anything that is progressing inconsistently for the first 3 quarters. And then for the final quarter, we'll be providing anecdotal notes for the parents in progressing inconsistently and gradually, in hopes to have more communication. For out of district, we have a lot of students that are out of district, not a lot, but for those students that are out of district, they're really balancing 2 schools. They're always a member of the Hastings community. They will always be Hastings. But they're also part of another community if it happens to not be in a standalone school. Let's say it happens to be in a neighboring district. And parents are often struggling with how to manage that communication. Who's in charge of what? Is it Hastings or is it the out-of-district placement? So we'd like to work with administration in coming up with some protocols on what that may look like, in knowing who to go to, who takes care of what, so the parents are not always trying to walk that balance beam of not knowing where they're going. Did you want to jump in or just...
No, you go ahead. I just, I think we're talking about building, like, our goal is to eventually get to the point where we get those kids back. We want to build something strong enough that we want to bring those children back. They belong here, and we're going to work until we get them back here, and I think that's the main thing. I just want to add to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. For annual reviews, this again came from parents. they talked a lot about, we walk a fine line in terms of predetermination and preparation. Predetermination, as you know, is against the law. You can't predetermine anything before you go into a meeting, but you can prepare. And parents were feeling, and as a parent of a special needs child myself, it's awfully overwhelming to walk into a meeting and things are just getting thrown at you. Programs, goals, needs, deficits, and all these things. And you're trying to process it as a parent for your own child and also think about how is this going to play out in the upcoming year. So we met with parents, and we've already started in terms of creating a template that we're going to provide parents with the students' present levels of performance and then suggested needs. Not these are needs that are set in stone, but they're suggested needs, so that when we come to the table for the annual review, the parents already have that information, that it's not like they're getting hit with something that was unexpected. To kind of take away the overwhelmingness, and they can be more focused. If there's something that they don't agree with or something that is questioning to them, they can reach out to the provider, to the case manager, and talk it through even prior to the meeting. This will also help us to reduce the number of missed sessions in terms of our related services. We have our speech and language and our OT attend a lot of our meetings. If we could avoid having them attend all the annual review meetings and only attend the re-evals and the initial meetings, that would cut down on our missed services tremendously. And by having the template that we're going to send out prior to the meeting, that will give the parents the opportunity to hear from what the suggestions and what the needs are that those related services are, providers are suggesting, and then they can reach out to them if they have any questions and work through it. And speak with the providers in advance of the meeting. So we're hoping that this is going to be a positive for the parents and as well as the missed services. We also we always try to focus on strengths, and unfortunately special education is this deficit area. If you wouldn't have an IEP if there were not deficits, but there's so much more to a child than what is the deficits that we focus on, and we really want to focus on those strengths and make sure that, and this kind of goes back to indicator 13 that Tesfa was speaking about, is that we really want to have the child's voice in the IEPs, and yes, there's going to be goals, there's going to be deficits, there's going to be needs, but what are the strengths about the child? What are their interests? What are their preferences? And really spend time talking about that as well, because the IEP is a well-rounded document, and often when you look at it, you're only looking at the deficits, and we don't want to lose sight of the whole child. So we want to really have the child's voice and build a well-rounded IEP around that.
I think I'm going to talk about professional development, but just to go back to indicator 13, I'm just thinking of the conversation we had recently with the CDOS credential and different options for students, and that's another thing I think we want to build our staff's capacity about understanding is the different graduation options, because the laws are changing and there are more options available for special needs students than they were 6 months ago or a year ago. And I think that's another portion of our work that we really need to focus on, is to understand the different options and understand at the same time. And it's unfair to high schools, and I get it, but kids move at different paces. So maybe the 4-year plan might not be everybody's plan, and we need to make sure that's okay. And we want to make sure the kids are comfortable and understand that, hey, whenever you're ready, we're here to support you. We're not going to force it and say, hey, we want to put everybody on a 5-year, 6-year. No. But we have to be realistic where not everybody's on the 4-year plan. And that has to be understood. And I think, understanding the different options available and having those conversations earlier would be a better plan. So professional development, spoke about it a little bit earlier, but let's talk about some things that we're looking for and hoping, to do upcoming. Over the summer, Laura and I, and hopefully some other people, might come to Syracuse University. They have an inclusive schooling over the summer, the Leadership Institute of Inclusive Schooling. We're looking to attend that. And in February, we're going to the lovely sunny state of Portland, Oregon for our second CEC conference. In October, Laura and myself were going to get some training on crisis prevention intervention, and we could turnkey this to other staff members. And one of the biggest things we really want to focus on moving forward, and we worked with the TAs and their unions to sort of get some information and survey them on what kind of professional development needs they need. And we want to continue to build capacity because, you know, there's certain TAs, teacher assistants, that end up becoming teachers. And if we could build that capacity with them and teach them the skills they need to help the children, then it helps everybody in the long run. So those are our goals as far as professional development. I think that might be it. And here's a list of all the professional developments we took.
Yeah, we just listed, I mean,
Yeah.
Tesfa and I have really entrenched ourselves in professional development this year, and looking forward to doing more. So we just kind of listed just some, there's 2 pages of it, but some of the professional development classes that we've taken. So I guess any questions?
So I'll just kick off with a few comments. First of all, I love the strengths-based stuff. And I don't know exactly what that means in this context. I know what it means more generally. You know, I've not seen a lot of detailed IEPs, for example, but just the concept of that seems really powerful. So how you do that and how you roll that out, I think that's great. You know, as you talk about PD, the thing that occurs to me is that there's so much PD going on around the district for lots of different things. And what occurs to me, and some of the value of having Melissa here and someone in that role, and Valerie, obviously, with your support, is to really have an integrated perspective on PD, not just as special education PD or general education PD, but what are we trying to do together? And I think one of the really interesting is the wrong word there, just kind of eye-opening findings was that we had 3 different buildings developing 3 different MTSSs. And I think that as someone who has an education background and then also fiduciary responsibility, you start to see some problems with that. I think that was pretty obvious to everyone. And I think there's so many opportunities for integration, whether it's integrating processes, whether it's integrating professional development. And I'm not down in the weeds enough on a day-to-day basis in the district to be able to say this for sure, but again, just knowing organizations, that lack of integration is where things fall through the cracks. And not having people on the same page is where things fall through the cracks. And I know that in the last, back in December when Dr. Katzman came, you know, I think one of the biggest sections of her report was just, and you know, as you look through, and I just pulled it up here, as you look through progress, it's ongoing, 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 ongoing. There was this developing a high quality and inclusive instruction with a multi-tiered system of support. And that one, first of all, that to me is like the heart and soul of special education. You know, what's very hard about being in these meetings is figuring out what's happening around that. I'm not saying something is happening or isn't happening, and I'm not saying it has anything to do with our district. I think the nature of special education, it's just hard to really see how are all those pieces coming together, where are you making the trade-offs. For example, Tesfa, you said we want to bring as many people back. You know, the question I wrote down here is, well, is that the right strategy, or is it the strategy with certain groups and other groups are going to other districts? Obviously, from a resources perspective, we're trying to make those strategic calls as to what are the right areas to build up so that we can really create kind of a center of excellence around certain things. And again, I don't have any answers here. All I know is that the more we're able to really have those strategic conversations, I think the more, you know, just the better we're going to be able to make decisions as administrators, as a board, as parents, as teachers. And maybe it was kind of buried in some of the bullets. I don't know, but I was hoping you guys could just talk a little bit about the evolution of that, you know, inclusive instruction inside of the multi-tiered systems and support. And it's a big thing. It's a multi-year thing. It's got a lot, as I said, there's like 17 different ongoings here.
So I just want to clarify, actually MTSS is the heart of general education.
Right,
It's actually
okay.
not the heart of special education, because that's what leads you up to special education. It's kind of, it if you go back to where it all came from, the federal government was feeling that years ago many children were being classified as learning disabled when they were actually just learned it differently.
Right.
So in order to be classified, they said that you had to have a system in structures in place in your general education. It used to be called response to intervention. Then it's some change to MTSS. So it's got many different acronyms, but it's showing that just because a child is not responding to the way a teacher's teaching in the classroom, years ago when I was sitting in the classroom, then there was something wrong with the student. Now it's saying the child just may learn differently. What can we do as educators to switch up? Maybe the child just needs to be in a small group. Maybe there just needs to be a little bit of direct instruction until they get that aha moment and they click and they're ready to move on. And that's really what the heart of general education is. And all of those things are happening completely before you would even need to be special education. So, or to have an IEP. So if you were not responding to all of the things that were put in place for MTSS, whether it's math, which is why Amy's so grateful for the math, AIS position is to give the children the opportunity to respond to these interventions. And if they're not responding, then change the intervention. If they're not responding to that, increase it. Increase the frequency, the duration. And if they're not responding to that, all the while you're collecting data. Then you can come to the table of a committee on special education and say, we've tried all of these things and the child is not responding to this. Then we're looking at perhaps a disability.
So let me put you on the spot here. So talk to me about how that integration occurs, right? Because MTSS is a doorway into the fact that you don't need it, and you respond to these different, eventually an IEP. And it would seem to me like there's a great opportunity for the baton to be dropped in there in a lot of different ways. And that's just an organizational reality, I think. And so when I read the audit, that read to me like the critical integration point. And I'm not saying here that batons aren't being dropped. I think you go into any organization, batons are being dropped. Case closed. But what I'm interested in is how do we get better at making sure fewer batons are dropped, more dialogue is happening, more communication's happening. And again, it's not accusatory of anyone. It's really just, I think, trying to get to the bottom of that. That was a big part of the audit, a big part of where the focus was, a big part of the progress, and it just didn't come out in the PowerPoint here. I would just love to hear maybe some anecdotal stories about progress in some of that. Like how has that been working?
So I think it doesn't come out in our PowerPoint because, again, it's more on the general education side. And I think the way that you avoid the baton from being dropped is very simple. Melissa, and she's sitting right here. That is your key to the integration of that general education and the special education. So it's MTSS is really, Amy's here, so I can ask Amy. And being a former principal at Hillside, I started the process of RTI. It's building the capacity in the building, but building the capacity in the building that then carries itself through, K-12. And I'm not going to ask Melissa because she's not here, but that's really where your assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction comes in to weave those two together, so that I would say rather than dropping the baton, children are falling through the cracks. And that's what we don't want to happen. And that's why you really need to have a strong MTSS plan that's cohesive in each building, that is just not only for those students, but then is systemic as a K-12.
Can I add here? And Amy, you feel free to comment. I had the privilege of seeing RTI in action over at Hillside. It is just a terrific program. It is really remarkable. It just showed me how far we've come. Well done.
So I look forward to Melissa just solving all of our problems.
Then you can bring peace in the Middle East when you're done with that.
And to the degree that, anyone wants to make a comment, I think, but as I look towards next year, that's something I really personally want to focus on, is the organizational reality of how we make that actually work. And the thing that now that I've been on the board for 3 years is, the educational world is a very legalistic, and special ed is like added on top of that, right? And I think it has an impact on your ability to come up with productive organizational solutions, because there's a desire to do that and a desire to cover your ass at the same time. I'm not saying you, I'm saying in general, and that's a real tension, I think. And I would love to find ways where we can just have honest conversations about where are there things falling through the cracks. I don't like that term, children falling through the cracks, but maybe that's really accurate, that the children are falling through the cracks. And if that is the case, I really want to see if we can create an open environment where we can have some of those conversations, and it's not finger pointing, and it's not the first reaction is how do I cover my ass, and how do I put a presentation together that makes sure I don't say much of anything, because if I say anything, it's going to get. And I'm not saying you're doing that here, but I'm just really almost sharing a degree of almost frustration that I've had about. Not special ed, just the integration of all the educational kind of dialogues and curricular dialogues that we're having in the district. And I just think there's a real opportunity, because when I think of Hastings, I think of it as like an amazing set of ingredients that sometimes gets put together in a good stew and sometimes doesn't. But the ingredients are good. If you have bad ingredients, you're never going to make a good stew. But we have amazing ingredients here, and sometimes we just don't get them together in the right dish. And that is something I'm really eager to, just in whatever way I can as a board member, and quite frankly, I don't even know what that is right now, but I really want to get behind that, because to me, that is really, I think, the critical place where we are right now. Everything you set up there is so critical and so important. PD, the way you're doing evaluations, the critical look at equity, the way that we're even shifting facilities to help support, and they're all ingredients, but the secret sauce is going to be people working together. The secret sauce is going to be people bringing challenges and issues to the table. And I almost want to just make a cry out to everyone in this room, everyone in the district, to say, how do we come together to begin to have some of these tougher conversations? Because that, I think, is something that's been missing. I don't think people talk about it much. I don't get paid by anyone here, so I can talk about it. But I really think it's critical, and I look forward to the energy and the effort as we move forward to continue to find ways to every day have fewer and fewer people fall through the cracks. So, that's
I just want to say that launching off of that idea that just beyond the critical pieces and details of the presentation, that it was observable to me to see the teamwork that was involved in creating it, and also the communication with SEPTA and other team members in terms of how you're revamping progress reports, in terms of how you're thinking critically about communication, that the suggestions of services, preempting meetings with parents. So I think that the spark is there, and I observed it, and I think that's really significant.
I have a couple of questions. And first off, I want to thank you and thank TESFA for this presentation, and more so for all the work that you guys have obviously put in this past year and the year before. So thank you, guys. Okay, a couple of specific questions. All of them relate to equity. One is we talked about, or you mentioned translation, and yes, it was found that prior to February 2019, families with limited English proficiency, even if they had a verbal translator, did not have any translated documents. And I was very sad to hear that. And I'm very happy to hear that moving forward, we are now providing an array of translated documents. My question is, what about families who, were not able to meaningfully participate in their children's education because of the lack of translation? So families who had their CSE meetings prior, or, are we going back in time to try to make right by all those families, or is this only moving forward? Because it's, again, if you handed me, my child's IEP in French, I wouldn't know what to do with it.
I'm glad you brought that up. First, I just want to clarify that there were not, you mentioned that there were no translated documents. If you go back to the screen, Testify, I don't know if you can, but we had everything translated except 3 areas: progress reports, prior written notices, and evaluations. When this came up in February, I contacted our district attorneys, and they provided us with, Testify and I, with what the United States Department of Justice offers in terms of regulations for translation documents. So I'd just like to read one paragraph in terms of what the school must provide to my child in terms of schools must communicate information to limited English proficient parents in a language they can understand about any program, service, or activity that is called to the attention of parents who are proficient in English. This includes, but is not limited to, information related to 1, registration and enrollment in school and school programs. 2, language assistance programs. 3, report cards. 4, student discipline policies and procedures. 5, special education related services and meetings to discuss special education. 6, parent-teacher conferences. 7, grievance procedures and notices of non-discrimination. 8, parent handbooks. 9, gifted and talented programs. And 10, requests for parent permission for student participation in school activities. So according to the U.S. Department of Justice, special education is only one of those 10 things. And as a result, the special education department currently, right now, is the only department in the Hastings-on-Hudson School District that is in compliance with the mandated translation materials. Because in doing research through this, we do not have mandated such things as mandated report cards, parent-student handbooks, permission slips, and so on being translated. I also did some research in some local school districts, and I found that they also provide all their community e-blasts, both written and through voice, in English and Spanish. So, for example...
Laura, I'm sorry, just for the sake of time, I appreciate all this, but my question was about, and I understand that sounds like, and that's good research, that there are more areas that we need to be good in, but I just wanted to find out about the families prior to February 2019. Are we now providing them with the translations in the areas that had not been provided?
So I guess my response would be that this goes well beyond special education, because my response would be, where have we provided them with their report cards prior to 2016?
I'm not trying to get in a battle between principals. I just want to make sure in the area of special... No, I know, but I'm just saying that special education... I'm just trying to find out about, I guess the answer is we haven't done anything with the families prior to February 2019?
In those 3 areas, in terms of the progress reports, no.
Okay, all right. The more equity questions, it was also found that it sounds like for the most part we do provide verbal interpreters, but on occasion when there hasn't been somebody there, we have pulled in a bilingual staff member. I'll just finish my question. And I wrote to the board and said how, at least according to the Office of Civil Rights, that that's not okay. So I want to know, have we changed that practice now?
So that practice didn't exist. There's one student, I think, that you're referring to, and according to that student, I can't share the information of the student because it's obviously confidential. That student's records in both eSchool Data and IEP Direct, the parent has requested not to have a translator. We've done it as a courtesy. Sometimes the parent has declined, and sometimes they've accepted. The meeting that you're referring to, the professional that was there was not asked to translate. They chose to translate on their own, but it was not a student that had a mandated translator on their IEP or in their eSchool data.
Okay, so when we need verbal translators, we're always
always
using
had one.
people who are certified or licensed.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And then the last thing, this goes back to socioeconomic status regarding equity. I know we did have, and this was in a non-confidential letter, that the district has said that we have given enhanced services where parents have stronger advocacy skills or in an effort to avoid litigation. And I wrote to the board, actually along with Nanisha Nunez, saying that we would love to see that practice changed, that children should get services based on what their disabilities are, not because of the strength of advocacy of their parents. And I understand we have a lot of strong advocates. I'm a strong advocate. I get that. So I have asked the board, and the board will have to deal with it going forward because I won't be here, to give you all our backing to say that services are awarded based on the needs of the child. Parents, we need you. We need you to help fill in and help us understand. But strength of advocacy or fear of a financial capacity to bring a litigation should not be involved in our decision. So I'd like to hope that the board can give you full support in just awarding services based on what the child's needs and not on the advocacy skills of the parents, because stronger advocacy skills do tend to correlate with wealth, which does tend to correlate with race. You don't have to respond to that. But I would hope that the board considers that about giving this department all the strength and the backing so that all children have equal opportunity to receive our services.
I just want to thank you guys for your effort that you put in. I think you've done nice work here. And obviously, the top thing is this is a pretty comprehensive look back and your next steps. You need to articulate to Valerie, to Melissa, these are our needs in priority order. This is directly what they translate to, and this is the timeline, having our needs as a department met. This is what we expect to deliver, having those needs met. So just continue that work. You continue that work on July 1 with the new administration. They're all ears. The board continues to be all ears. Just have it be clear about what your needs are, be clear about what the deliverables are going to be, and we'll continue to work together. So it's a long road to get to this point. It's going to continue to be a long road. I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't think we have, as wonderful as I think you're going to be, I don't think you represent the answers in terms of an immediate answer. So the road's going to continue, and it's going to just require being really clear, really direct, even when the needs are, I'm just going to use an example. If there's an advocacy issue where there's a parent that's beating down your door looking for something more than you think is appropriate, it might be a case where you need to ask the superintendent and assistant superintendent to step in on your behalf and address it. That's what I mean as well. It's not just financial needs. It's your needs in terms of support as a department to continue to meet the level of excellence that I think I've seen prior to this presentation, and I continue to see through this presentation, but the level of excellence that you set for yourself and your department. So just ask for the support and just keep pushing forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the just all the sweat equity you guys have been putting in and building this foundation. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, you can go.
I think Mark just had those couple of enrollment slides. If you
Why don't we take a
Okay.
little break if people don't want to sit through business?
Well,
Or do you want to jump to
we can.
or do you want to do a public?
people that were here.
Or do you want to do a public comment?
Yeah, well,
Jam the second public comment in if people want to go.
Why don't we do the? We'll do 5 and then come back to 4. Personnel, because are they in 5? Are they in 5?
The new hires that are here.
Yeah, are they in the business items, or are they in the
They're
personnel?
5A.
Okay, good. There's so much here.
You could just do 5A if you want, because, I mean, the people,
We can do all 5A, B, and C, I believe, as a consent. Does anyone have any questions about 5A, B, or C?
I'm going to abstain on 5C. That's fine.
Okay, so 5A and B. Do I have a motion to approve the appointments and leave of absence?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Oh, sorry. I'm jumping ahead. Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay. 5C, do I have a motion to approve 5C?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Hold on, Tim.
You can leave me as abstain on that, please.
Okay, so let's go, well, so congratulations officially to everyone in the audience who we just voted on.
Welcome aboard.
We will, I know there's a lot of teachers here and it's late. We're going to go through some business items and then have a public comment. That is primarily what's left. So if anyone wants to go now, feel free. We'll give you 2 seconds to get up. We're going to, I don't think it's going to be a very late meeting, but
Public comment first. That's fine. I mean, if
no, we can't. We're not going to do the public comments first. The business items should not take that long.
it's just like, just added it together. You'll see it in this, yeah.
And I really don't think we're going to have more than like 15 or 20 minutes with some of these items.
This is only 3 slides, and the first one just relates to a few of the business items.
Yeah, so there's a lot of this going on in business items.
Yes.
I'm glad you did that.
Okay. Okay, why don't we go with the business items? Does anyone have any questions? I know it looks like we're jumping into something here, but before we just jump into that, is that, I guess we'll start there. What number is this? This is just the,
So these are just.
these are just your numbers.
These are just, yeah, because it's going to be, we're required prior to the end of the year to make any designations to fund balance before the end of our fiscal year. And these numbers really reflect more or less, well, we've shown this slide a number of times throughout our budget presentations, and they're pretty consistent in where we anticipated our end of year balances to be. There's a few tweaks because, as the board knows, we made a decision a few weeks back to do some work that was initially in the capital bond because of safety issues. So because of that, we did spend down a couple more dollars. We also had some additional expenses around the architects and some of the design work we decided to move forward with. So that has just slightly changed some of these numbers. The capital reserve, what we're recommending tonight is to increase that reserve by $200,000. And I think initially we had talked about doing something in the $350 range there, but we've decided, and we've already approved the contract to take some of that work out and get that started, as it was not only, was actually a security and a safety issue in our buildings with the security system, but everything else here more or less is the same numbers we've been speaking about. There's a slight variation in the tax cert, and that's just due to timing of making the attorneys settling the what is due, so that changed slightly because some of those will probably now be paid out next year. The timing of the settlement was slightly different. So initially we had thought we had a few more things that we're still negotiating the settlement on. So, but other than that, there's not a large change. The one thing that the board had approved a few weeks back was the creation of the TRS retirement reserve fund, which is actually a sub-reserve of the retirement, but just for purposes of this sheet, I included a line, and we're making the recommendation to put in $200,000 this year. And again, this was something we had discussed and was always part of the overall, the bottom line of the total fund balance is pretty much close to what it was. It's just moving a few things around. But that's just, I figure since it was on there, just to kind of give you an update of where we ended up. Of course, there'll be
all reflected in the business, all this.
It is. I just felt as...
There's like 4 or 5 in here.
There are 3 different items, and again, other than the change to what we've been discussing throughout the budget with the capital reserve, what we were deciding to put on there, which was a decision the board had made to upfront some work, which would reduce that amount, and then again, some timing things with the tax cert, as well as the establishment of the TRS sub-reserve, which the governor has signed in, that we were, everyone was thrilled about, and this number reflects, it's a little bit lower than we could actually put in because it's based upon 2% of teacher salary, so it's a certain, percentage. So, again, we had a good year. We are, as recommended, working to reduce our overall amount of reserves, but then also trying to find places that we know we need to have some money for future needs, such as the capital reserve, and certainly I think the retirement system reserve and the tax cert are important things, and we've been able to pay down a lot of our liabilities. You see that in the end of June 30th, 2016, we had close to $3 million worth of liabilities, and with having that reserve, we've been able to handle many of those, and then as we're clear on those amounts, return the money back to the operating budget. So that's where we are, and thankfully, I think, well, I don't know, with the reassessment, but I think the needs of the tax tertiary fund hopefully will be lessened with the reassessment of some of the values in town. So that's that. And then I'm just going to hop to the enrollment slide. Is that okay to do?
Yep.
It's 3 slides. I know I shared this with the board last week. Just wanted to kind of update you as it relates to where we are in terms of next year. Right now, we have not seen, this number was from last week, and I wasn't able to get the updated numbers. I don't think there was anything in the last few days, but this is kind of where we stand in our enrollment right now for Hillside. As you can see, as of, and I think this was last Monday, we had 94 students currently enrolled in kindergarten. At this same time last year, that number was at 103. And then not, just assuming that we would continue to have, as we typically trend over the summer, an additional 20 or so students in that grade, where would that potentially lead us? And again, that 115 is obviously an estimate, but just based upon the fact that typically between July and August, we pick up 20 students in the kindergarten. There's no real science to it. Yes.
So we had talked about this with the thought of possibly adding, without having to hire another teacher, increasing the sections in 4th grade to 7 and decreasing the sections in 2nd to 5. And just some quick math I did on my phone. If we do that, 2nd grade would have 22 students and 4th grade would have 19.8, which would, narrow, it would bring them more in alignment. So I guess my question is, are we following up on that? Maybe it's a question for Amy. I don't know, but I know. I don't know. I think it's something worth discussion.
And I guess also, part of it, we had kind of two concerns looking at that 4th grade. Obviously, it's getting to a tipping point, and again, although we're not seeing it right here, there's a potential that if that follows trend, which it has in the last few years, they've been experiencing between 6 to 8 or 9 new registrants in the 4th grade, which has been an entrance point for us. So the concern about will that bubble to like a 24 or 25th student, if in fact it were to follow that trend. So I guess there were two things, not knowing about that so we had the space issue at Hillside, so the concern initially with adding a 7th section and leaving everything else 6 was then would end up being another issue for us as we looked at classroom space at Hillside. So I think the idea was that we plan to have 6 sections or 30 sections. How they go across the board, certainly we're just reflecting what is currently the case. But, obviously really keeping an eye on that kindergarten section as well, because I think Jody had made a point that, that could only end up being 103 students also. So if that were to be the case, would that be the place where you would reduce to 5? Because you have the 2 staff members there too.
I was going to say, in the past, with 115 in a class, we've done 5.
Correct.
That was traditionally what we did.
So I guess I would...
We still have, but to answer Lisa's question specifically, we still have another month, 5-6 weeks before we're going to have to start making some of those tougher decisions. Is that correct?
Right, and I guess it would go to Amy. I know the board had asked for just an update because this was something that was on all of your radar throughout the budget, and I know there was a lot of talk about that 4th grade cohort and the numbers there. So, I just wanted to kind of update you based upon what we have currently and see kind of, we had talked about if the kindergarten or potentially at least, that other grade level that's a little bit on the is on the lower end. I know, not to put Amy on the spot, but I know it's hard also for planning purposes. At one
Yeah,
point, they need
yeah.
to know, where that's going to go.
Especially if the
So-
teacher is moving
Oh,
from one
absolutely.
grade
Well,
to
yes,
another. That's a
absolutely. And
huge
we've done
task.
that, as you know, either had to hire people kind of last
Yeah.
minute, so in an attempt to try to, give the boards updates and then, know what, because we had spoken about it with the budget, so I don't know if Amy has any thoughts, but I think
We
that.
just have to watch, we have a lot of students that are on the radar. Are those numbers included in these numbers, Maureen?
This is what I received from Michelle, and I did get the on the radars, and right now I'm not, interestingly, we are seeing kids at, the other levels, meaning middle school and high school, but as of right now, that was pretty much what she had.
So I know I have a number of parents who have reached out to say that they are moving.
Okay,
But they haven't moved yet. So I don't know if they're on Michelle's radar.
okay.
A lot of moving over the summer that happens.
I'll also say, I know we've had I think 3 requests for faculty who live out of district to have their kids come, which is free tuition. And I am concerned about saying yes on that for Hillside, because we basically just sold a bond based on space constraints. The other schools may have more room and breadth, but in terms of Hillside, I think we really have to be cognizant of the space constraints.
Right, and that actually also is part of kind of the ongoing discussion, especially if we're really monitoring that K. So maybe, Amy, you can provide me some of the on the radars, because we have, in the past, we do try to track some of those families and just to understand what grade level their students would be coming into. But this is really the most up-to-date that I've gotten from the registrar. So to Lisa's point, we do have a few people that are requesting kindergarten enrollment for their students. So we do, and I have that on here, on the bottom.
And I'll add another thing. If we say no based on space, that doesn't mean a few years down the line, when we have a larger building, that they can ask us again.
And yet I did include that there because I wanted to make sure that people understood that they were not yet factored into that 94 number.
Yeah, so thanks both. Let me just take a moment to remind that, Valerie, as you come in and take over on July 1, ultimately this will be your recommendation that the board will be seeking, as opposed to the board suggesting. And to the extent that we have a small elementary class and the marginal child doesn't make a lick of difference, because if it's 6 kids at an 18-kid class or 6 kids at a 19-kid class and half those classes have an additional kid, but the physical space doesn't change. So ultimately, you know this already, you've done this for a long time, and also with respect to the educational best interest of a very large cohort in one grade and another, the board will be looking forward to your recommendation in July, also with an understanding that the needs of the teachers have to be met in terms of what grade they're going to be teaching if there is going to be a change. So, when we speak, either at the organizational meeting or sometime shortly before, sometime shortly later, your recommendation in terms of what the right, both staffing, makeup of the elementary is, we'll be eagerly awaiting that, and also whether you think that there is capacity for the staff members that are asking the district to accept their kids. So that's past protocol. I expect that protocol to continue, and we look forward to your recommendation. Thanks.
I look forward to reviewing the policies that are in place now that govern new class sizes, as well as the policy around staff who's attending, allowing their children to attend the schools. That's the first place, which is a policy that you've already done. So I'd be happy to look at those and see whether those need to be updated or any recommendations to revise those.
Yep, great, thank you.
Okay, so let's keep moving here on the business items. Does anyone have any questions about any of the other business items? Thank you, Maureen.
Yeah, and the other one thing, I was just going to do a budget update. The one thing, just to let you know here, is we're pretty much on track to do all of our hiring. We don't need to hire one of the special ed positions, because we had planned to have 2 learning labs next year, and we're still going to have the 2 ICT across the K-5, but one of the learning labs at Hillside, which had been operational this year, is because of the children's placements, is not going to need to be staffed. So we're actually, as of today, we're kind of 1 teacher less than what we had thought we needed to hire. So that was, just wanted to give you that update too, because we already had that.
Great, that's helpful. That's helpful.
So
Okay.
it's actually going in the good direction.
So I have a print copy here, so I don't know if it's the most recent. Is it 18 business items still? Or has a 19th snuck in there somewhere?
1 through, it's very strangely numbered.
I know,
Oh, there's 18.
I can't get an internet connection, and,
It's weird, the documents
It's through 18.
don't match
It's
up with
18.
the exact numbers.
okay.
It's 18 with
I
it,
see like
6A, 6B, 16A, 16B, 17A,
Oh, I think there's
17B.
two pieces.
It's just-
Two different
but
documents.
It's still one item.
It's 18.
One
But I added-
vote,
I added the
2
minutes.
documents, right,
Right.
okay.
One item with 2 documents.
So, does anyone have any questions about 1 through 18? As they are. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve business items for 1 through 18? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Okay, 4B, placement for services CSE and CPSC. Do I have a motion to approve the placements?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. We've done 5. Approval of minutes from the June, was it, what was that, 6th or 3rd? I can't remember. 3rd, okay. It just doesn't have it here. June 3rd meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, no committee reports here. So new business, just, this is really informational, organizational meeting date. I think everyone here that needs to be at that meeting knows about it, July 15, 7:30, yeah, okay, 7:30 PM. And with that, we are at second public comment. So let me open up the floor to the public for any comments that you have.
Good evening, Nina Siegel Kennedy, 35 Fraser Place. I actually had a public comment, but I wanted to scrap it to address a couple of issues that came up from the board on Lauren Tesfa's presentation. And as a parent of 3 children in the district, one with an IEP, I've been very active on a number of committees and interview committees. And I think if I were Lauren Tesfa right now, I would be seething a bit about the issues of accusation around race and equity. I just wanted to mention that I've worked with Laura since she was principal at Hillside, and we served together on a race and diversity committee that used to meet in people's houses before there was even RISE and the diversity official committees right now. And I also served on both interview committees when she hired the only 2 African-American administrators of color in the district. So I feel like she really walks the talk, and I've seen that in action. And I also feel that Lauren Tesfa have inherited a system after our previous director of special education where so many people were systematically denied services and classification that I've just seen them bend over backwards for students from all socioeconomic backgrounds and to classify and provide services, including my neighbor who couldn't be here tonight, who has 2 children of color that were not classified until Laura arrived. So I just want to give a shout out for seeing a very different side of that. And I think, Doug, your part, you raised the issue of the MTSS and the difficult conversations, and I think you're right, and you really have your finger on the pulse of things. I think that in some ways, maybe all the people that need to hear what you just said aren't all necessarily in this room. And with children falling through the cracks, many of our children with IEPs are in general education classrooms, and I think that the level of collaboration varies dramatically, and that special ed is still siloed. So my experience in terms of implementation of inclusion, for example, is that Laura and Tesfa can't mandate that a teacher gets professional development if a principal overrules that. Laura and Tesfa can't mandate that a consultant get into a general education classroom to observe without permission. Laura and Tesfa can't create a staggered executive functioning curriculum if a school chooses not to embrace it. So my hope as a parent who's seen many administrative changes and we're seeing a new superintendent, and very excited to welcome you and our curriculum assistant superintendent, is that we do start weaving and having some of those difficult conversations to get everyone on the same page. Thanks.
Public comment?
Barbara Rizzo, 9 Hastings Close. So for one, I am, for about the next 48 hours, the vice president for Hillside of SEPTA. And after that, God willing, I'll be the president, co-president of SEPTA. So from that, I do want to thank Laura and TESFA for a great presentation, and also their collaboration with us, because many of the things that came up, or several of the things that came up, were things that we spoke about, and we helped, I feel like, develop a little bit, and that's just great to know that we're heard, and that's one. The other piece I just wanted to mention, also with the MTSS, and this is just not as a SEPTA, but just as a parent of 2 children in the district, I think it needs to be said again that MTSS is a general education situation, because when it keeps being put back on special ed, I worry that there's not an understanding of what that is, what the RTI, what the MTSS is. And it is upsetting that it's different. We only have 3 buildings in the district, so how we can't get all on the same page. Because I think there's also just a basic philosophy that just because a child might need extra help somewhere, for whatever reason, and in whatever, maybe a different modality of education, maybe a different size of group, doesn't mean they're special education. Doesn't mean they need to be in an ICT class. Doesn't mean they need to be classified. They just might need extra assistance, and I think it has to be the buy-in from the board, from district administration, from building administration, from the teachers, that a child who might not learn exactly the way you teach doesn't mean there's something with the child. It means maybe you got to try something different, or just because they need a modification doesn't mean we need to jump right into, you know, getting TESFA or Laura on the phone and getting special education. It's really just that buy-in that we need to meet children where they're at. And I just want to make sure we understand that that's not a Laura and TESFA. That's a district gen ed situation. Thank you.
Hi, Eileen Charles, 41 Fraser Place. As a parent of 3 children in the district, 2 who have now graduated and started college, I really look forward to Laura and TESFA's plan being implemented and being supported by the board and by our new superintendent and assistant superintendent of curriculum, going through the process for years. With my son, who's now finished his first year in college, thanks to Laura Sullivan, I think, because after not being classified for about 5 years, he was finally classified in 10th grade, and I think that has saved his education. No child should fall through the cracks, and I think, and I don't know all the reasons, but I think with this plan of inclusion and focusing on the strengths, not the weaknesses, there's nothing like having a room full of teachers saying what your child cannot do, and then having the one where he may shine or they may shine, and having that teacher say, well, that's not the kid I'm seeing in my class, so that's a sign. And that's, you know, where our focus, I'm happy to see that will be going, as well as helping with the strengths, well, helping with the strengths of the children. So thank you, and I appreciate all the work you're doing. Doug, if you want to see an IEP, I'd like to show you my son's, because I think after the audit, I think every board member should know what an IEP is and does and looks like, because that's really the basis of what we're talking about. So thank you.
I'm Kate Lowengart. I live at 9 Amherst Drive. Many of you know me as president of SEPTA. Barb is taking my spot in 48 hours, so I had to get it in. One, I just want to say in public to Laura and Tesfa, thank you for all the work you've been doing. It's palpable just how far we've come in such a short amount of time because of all the hard work that you both put in. And I think it needs to be said publicly that you both have believed in what can happen. You've heard the feedback. It hasn't been easy. It's been a process. It's probably been pretty painful. But, I think we can all see that we are getting somewhere. And it's absolutely because you both have opened doors. And, Amy sitting right next to you, I can say that having one child in kindergarten who isn't in special ed, I can see the difference even in his experience at Hillside from my 4th grader because of how you were all working together. And I think that sort of ties into, Doug, what you were saying. When people work together in a school district, great things can happen. And I think that these 3 people sitting here are a really good example of that. And I really encourage the board to use this as a model moving forward of how we can begin to grow the special ed program within our schools, and quite frankly, all programs, because when everyone works together and we're solution-based and we're solution-oriented and we're talking about children, things change. And I think that that's important to remember as we move forward, that while a lot of things have changed, for a lot of our students, particularly older students who are in our high school, they're moving on without having had this change afoot for them. And I think that could even go for some middle schoolers and upper elementary schoolers. I mean, the difference between our CPSE process and our early intervention now to 3 years ago is going to make a tremendous impact for the students moving through our school system. But it's really important that as we look to all these changes, we also think about the kids that are kind of ahead of the changes and how we can implement them. And that's really going to take a lot of partnership from those administrators as well as from our new administrators, our district office. We're all so happy to see you both here. And I'm really looking forward to all that's to come. As a parent who also has a child out of district, for a lot of the reasons we're talking about tonight, I feel like we're seeing things moving in a place where we can all feel like maybe these kids will, I feel like a child like my child who's in kindergarten now, their parents are probably not going to have to make the same hard decisions that I had to make. And I want to thank you all for that as well, because your leadership and Dr. Wilson, as you leave us, I mean, truly, so many people in this room contributed to a climate of solutions. And that's really the only way we're all going to move forward with everything, with equity, with race, with diversity, with special education, anything that hasn't traditionally been front and center in this community. We've unearthed, and we are moving forward with it. And I just thank all of you for contributing to that.
Hi, I'm Laura Weitzman at 101 Lincoln Avenue. I wasn't planning to speak, so I feel a little bit, I have a little less clarity than I'd like. But I'll say that it really moved me, Doug, when you talked about that you don't like to think of a child falling through the cracks. That's how it feels in the middle of the night all the time. My kid's falling through the cracks. I don't have the money to hire a lawyer to sue the district so that I can send my kids someplace else. And even if I did, it wouldn't be enough money to send him someplace else. And the school district can't serve him. He's got an incredibly high IQ. He's an incredibly nice and mature kid, but he has severe executive function issues. And it's like trying to work with the system is like screaming into the void. It's like nothing comes back. And the special education program is so well-meaning. Your hearts are in the right place. You're working so hard and so fast. But there are kids who the change isn't going to come fast enough, like my kid who's finishing 10th grade now. And so I guess what I want to say in the interest of other kids is when I hear about the issues with general education tonight and how they connect to the issues with special ed, they're really just all kids, right? It's not about there are special ed kids and there are general ed kids. It's about they're all kids. And it seems to me, you know, I'm an organization development consultant. I think that's your field also, right? It's about culture change, right? And so I hear about all of this professional development, and I'm reading the list, and I'm like, oh my God, you guys put together a kick-ass list of professional development. I provide a lot of professional development. I'm like, yeah, I want to see that list. But the problem is professional development doesn't have a really high return on investment without leadership buy-in, without coaching to support skills implementation on the part of all the people who go through the professional development. There are all these things that we know in our field are required. And I'm really curious, I just don't know what the plans are in the district to make sure those things happen so that more parents aren't lying awake every night watching their kid fall through the cracks. And that's what I'd really like to know about. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I think this was a good night, and I want to also just reaffirm what others have said, that I think that everyone has their opinions on what's working well and what isn't, and a lot of that's colored by what your own student and your own child is dealing with, and it's all valid. And I think that's really important. And I think what can happen is people can invalidate others' perspectives for a variety of reasons. And, you know, I want you to know that and I think I can speak for the board, we see them all as valid. And there's a lot of sometimes just challenging things we're always trying to work through. But I want you to know that we hear you. We've always heard you. We are really working as hard as we can to try to balance a lot of challenging dynamics. I think one of the classic ones is, as a public school district, you know, you've got way more things that you want to resource than you have the resources to resource, and there's always a lot of hard decisions. But I think at the core of all of our decisions is kids. I mean, we have to always come back to what is going to work for the kids, and where that goes off the rails and the tracks in any school district is where you run into problems when it becomes about the adults or the programs or something else. And I think what tonight is just another great reminder of is, if you stay focused on the kids and you make decisions with the kids' best interests at heart, yeah, you're going to take a little bit of you-know-what from different people for a variety of different reasons, but I think that's what allows us as board members to sleep well at night, is to say that we're making decisions in the best interests of the children. So I think I can probably speak for all the board when I say that. And I want to thank you, Laura and Tesfa, for a lot of your work is behind the scenes in ways that people don't really see, and sometimes you're kind of trying to dig out of a hole, and just to get onto the firm ground takes a lot of work. And sometimes people just say, but they're just standing on the firm ground. Well, but that took a lot of work to even get there on some of the issues you're dealing with. So thank you for everything that you guys are doing. So with that, I want to go to Board of Ed comments. I'll kick it off. I want to, it's our last meeting with Dr. Wilson, and I really want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for stepping in as an interim, which is never an easy thing to do. It is coming off the beach in Maine. What I imagine is a very beautiful home overlooking the water. I don't know what it actually is up there, but that's how I like to imagine it. To come and help us out. An interim is a hard role for anyone to be in. You're essentially stepping into a whole bunch of crazy things, and you know you're only there for a year to help out. And your guidance and your leadership around a variety of things, from the bond and really getting us focused on what a good bond process looks like, has been extremely helpful. So I just want to really thank you for your efforts.
So I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I'd always heard great things about Hastings, and they held up. I do think you've gone through a period of change, and right now I think your stock is rising. I think you have a terrific future here. I mean that sincerely. We've heard a lot of good, positive things going on tonight. It seems to me that you've got the personnel, and I just think you're going to have and a great Board of Ed going forward is going to be all good. So I wish you well, and thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Okay. Meeting adjourned.